barbarians,
torturers,
officers.
Lend us your steels. Welcome back to the Brothers Gwynne channel. Today we're very excited to be talking about Before They're Hanged, the second instalment of the original First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. So this is the second of our series.
Yeah, let's show the covers
of
First
Law
the covers
reviews.
Because they are sublime. Here we have the
original
book.
hardcover. Yeah.
Here we have the
10th anniversary
edition,
which actually got this from the broken binding with a signed book plate, which is chef's kiss.
Yeah, me too. Not a book plate though.
Actually signed by Lord Grimdark himself.
Lord
But
GD.
today we talked about the blade itself a few weeks ago, and you can go check that out if you want to.
Yep.
There will be minor spoilers for the blade
Only
itself, but no spoilers for Before They're Hanged. This is a spoiler-free review, but do bear in mind that we will be talking about where the characters start off, which means that you know where they end up at the end of the blade itself.
And if you're itching for spoilers, then we will be doing a spoiler talk very soon about the First Law trilogy with the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast, Dylan and Charles.
That indeed
And I'm sure they'll be making some wonderful gifs from the video, but that'd be good fun.
And we have a few more planned, but not set in stone yet, so we won't mention them. But now, let's get into it. Ed, do you want to read the blurb for Before They're Hanged?
I guess I'll read the blurb then.
Oh, alright then.
How do you defend a city surrounded by enemies and riddled with traitors, when your allies can by no means be trusted and your predecessor vanished without trace? It's enough to make a torturer want to run, if he could even walk without a stick, and Inquisitor Glockter needs answers before the Gurkish army comes knocking at the gates. Northmen have spilled over the border of Angland and are spreading fire and death across the frozen country. Crown Prince Ladisla is poised to drive them back and win undying glory. There is only one problem. He commands the worst armed, worst trained, worst led army in the world. And Biaz, the first of the Magi, is leading a party of bold adventurers on a perilous mission through the ruins of the past. The most hated woman in the south, the most feared man in the north, and the most selfish boy in the Union make a strange alliance, but a deadly one. They might even stand a chance of saving mankind from the Eaters, if they didn't hate each other quite so much. Ancient secrets will be uncovered, bloody battles will be won and lost, bitter enemies will be forgiven, but not before they are hanged. Mic
What
drop.
mic drop from Joe Abercrombie there.
Yeah.
What a blurb, but still, even though that is amazing, it does not do the story justice. As you may find out during this review, it's my favourite read of the year.
Yeah,
so
we
far.
kind of enjoyed this one.
A
Little
bit. But now let's get into characters. So just to kick us off, I would say that the characters were the strong point of the blade itself, and I think that Joe Abercrombie just elevates that in Before They're Hanged. He takes what was already fantastically crafted characters and takes them to the next level. It says in the blurb that Bears is leading a group to the edges of the world, and so the perspectives of Pharaoh, Logan and Jezzel, as you see at the end of the blade itself, begin there with a variety of a few other characters. And the dynamic of this group and their interactions and seeing it from their different perspectives was absolute, I don't think there's another word for it other than genius. Some of the best reading experience I have ever had because of the variety of humour, the severity, just their different mindsets and how they react to different situations, and how the subtext of how their past feeds into how they're acting in the present. It was really just amazing, and really, if you want to be an aspiring writer, that is something that I think everyone should read to get a grip on character and interactions and dialogue. It was awesome.
It's brilliant, yeah. Joe Abercrombie's grasp of his characters is just sublime, and it really is inspiring. When I read these characters, I feel like I just want to go and write my own, make my own up, but you'll never do them justice. I love the characters in Before They're Hanged. I think, as William said, he starts off so well with the blade itself that they only get better in Before They're Hanged, and you feel like you know them that much more. Now, I'm a very character-orientated writer. I want that emotion in there, and even though it's grimdark, people use that word grimdark. Some people don't like it, but they are all dark people. But they all feel they kind of feel real, don't they? Whereas they all have their own motivations. They're all flawed, massively flawed people, but you do get behind them. And the one reason why I love reading multi-POV books is to see how the author pulls together all of the different strands and how the characters then associate with each other and their relationships, how they're intertwined, and you see lots of intertwining in Before They're Hanged by a long shot, don't you? There's so much, and how you see really how the characters feel about one another, and then you have all these different references because of what happened in the Blade itself. For example, we have Logan and Jezzel together, which is just so much fun, and it is amazing that their relationship is so good. Well, it does get better throughout the book anyway, but just seeing how they all associate with each other, Jezzel with his sarcastic thoughts and he's not willing to speak his mind, and Logan with all of his advice that we take into our everyday lives. I wonder if Joe Abercrombie says these words of advice to his children or to his wife. You can never have too many knives. And then you've got Glockter as well, who's basically reminds me of Tyrion in Game of Thrones when he's trying to look after the city, even though he's not a warrior or a strategist. He is a very clever man. He's a sharp-minded man, and he got an even sharper tongue as well. But I love the characters in here, and you really do get behind them here, and it feels like they've got small stories within a big story.
Exactly.
Really like.
Yeah. And I was going to say that we've talked about the dynamic of Pharaoh, Logan, and Jezzel, but we can't forget Glockter, West, and the Dogman. They're in different places. That is awesome how that story comes about. And if you've read Before They're Hanged and you're watching this for a bit of nostalgia, what a moment. We'll talk about that probably in a future video. We want to do our top 10 moments of the First Law trilogy, so soon.
That's be hard.
And as I was saying, the Dogman and West, they interact, and Glockter's somewhere quite separate, but all the characters add something very different, and when they're put together, it amounts to the perfect experience.
Yeah.
So
it was a 600-page book, and because of the characters, nothing ever feels dull or boring. You're never rushing to get through to the next person, because I'll read a Logan chapter and it'll end, and I'll be like, oh no, I want Logan again. Then I'll see the next one's Glockter, and I'm like, yes. So it's so much fun, and Jezzel is so underrated.
I think
we need to have a shout out for
in the
Jezzel.
series. I think he may be my favourite character.
That's a bold claim, Will. But I
He
like
might
it.
be. Maybe. But on that bold claim, let's move on to what's the next segment?
I think plot. So plot actually is far greater. Plays a much bigger role in Before They're Hanged rather than the Blade itself. The Blade itself felt a little bit like a prequel, maybe. It's setting up those characters, those relationships. But I love the Blade itself because that's why Before They're Hanged feels so good, because it spends that time setting up the characters. You've established everyone. You've established the world building, and then Before They're Hanged it's like a spider web. It shoots all the characters into different places. You got people going up north, people going down south, people going to the old west, which is so much fun. The plot is. This is where Joe Abercrombie, I think, takes these tropes that people were used to if they read traditional fantasy, and then he completely shifts them. Yeah, he subverts them, he puts them on their head, and this is where you really see how he gets to work with these classic fantasy themes and ideas. This is Joe Abercrombie's chance to pay his homage to Game of Thrones, I think.
Yeah, I was saying that in the last review we said that it's quite political, and the plot, there's not much progression, but it's setting everything up so you can just go straight in Before They're Hanged.
It starts literally like a couple minutes after Blade itself finishes.
Exactly, and the plot shoots right ahead, and we have great powers moving. We've got the centre of the Union. We spend most of the Blade itself in Adua, which is the capital city of the Union, and a bit of time up north as well. But in this, we've got people, as Ed said, going to the west. We've got Gurkle and the north moving against the Union now, and those conflicts are rising, and we know that West is going to go and fight some pretty big battles with the north. And we know that Glockter is also being sent into danger, and so there's a lot of this political manoeuvring going on at the same time as these dangers are revolving around the characters, that even though they are at times despicable, you just want them to be safe, and they're so sympathetic at the same time. And so the plot, I think, some people, I didn't really find it a problem, but this is a review to see if this is kind of for you. And for me, not for me, sorry, I just said it's not for me, but some people didn't really like that plot took oh my word, I cannot speak. Took the back bench in the Blade itself, but that is rectified in Before They're Hanged. There's a really great balance struck between character and plot, so none takes over the other. I think characters are still at the heart, but plot is a huge factor in Before They're Hanged.
And the plot moves forward through the characters rather than around the characters, and the characters just have to react to it, even though they do react to a lot. But it feels like it's very character orientated. And some people get to the end of this book and they think, what the hell? So I just read that, and they might feel a little bit disappointed because it might feel like it's gone backwards. They've taken 1 step forwards and 3 steps back. But I love that. I love that. This is Joe Abercrombie starting to get into gear, and he's ramping up the tension, and he sets your expectations up. And it's like a piece of Jenga. He just pulls the tower out from the bottom, and everything crumbles, and you're just like, oh, but I love it.
Exactly.
And on to pro.
We do that a lot, don't we? We may be brothers, but we still cross wires.
I'm getting really good at being able to look at you from this side, even though I can't see the other side properly.
See, I'm actually looking at you through the reflection of the phone, which is our camera.
That's brilliant.
But now, going beyond
Pretty
angles...
specific.
Now let's go on to pros. I would say that, obviously, if you want a more elaborated version of our talk on the pros, I would go to our review on the blade itself, because we don't...
you should check that out.
We don't want to repeat ourselves a lot, because pros, obviously, it will stay
it's
quite
the same,
similar.
but better. Yeah.
But I would say that, again, Joe Abercrombie, he's a master of the pros. He introduces a different vernacular and style with each of his perspectives that really emphasises their psychological state.
And again, you feel like you know the characters so well, because you read a line of their chapter, and it's like, this is so them, You can see them saying that, like, Pharaoh might have a punchline, or Logan will have a little piece of advice, or the way Jezzel looks at someone. You can see the way Joe Abercrombie describes things in that perspective. It's like, if you're talking about Jezzel, he will write a thing, he'll generally describe something, but then he'll pick out key details that Jezzel would notice. Like, Jezzel, obviously he's an officer, he's brought up in Adua, so he's a little bit posh, isn't he?
Propriety is a
exactly.
key
So
factor.
and he thinks of, in terms of money, in terms of looks, and Logan might be able to look at something, and when he's described as something, you might look at
more pragmatic,
like a city, and he might be quite overwhelmed because he's not used to that. But then he looks at something else, and he can, like a sword, he can talk quite with confidence about weaponry, or what that would be used for, or tactics, that kind of thing. So he relates every single line back to the character's personality, their experiences as well, and it feels like they are fully fleshed. Again, it goes back to the characters.
Exactly. And I think that he has those allusions to their livelihoods really just nailed down. And also with the pros, this is grimdark, term that's bandied around a bit, but it's generally accepted that the first one is grimdark.
Words, mate.
But
with this worm.
But this is grimdark, but it's very humorous at the same time, and the prose is a key factor in that. It brings the story to life. The bitter twists to Glockter's jokes and Jezzel's and Logan's and all their jaded past.
In everyone there is a list of 3, and I love the list of 3s.
He loves his tricolons, says Joe Abercrombie.
Brilliant,
And it's that I think that you have to have a balance, don't you? And Joe Abercrombie, this is one of the funniest books I've read. Pharaoh's reactions to all the group around her. Jezzel deciding
reactions to Pharaoh.
Jezzel deciding who we should approach and talk to, and his evaluations of them. I think that it really just bring that life to the story that is not lacking, but you don't see in much else. That huge variety of tone and mood that is really just brilliant. Should we go on to the next bit?
Let's do it.
And the next part of this discussion is about the world building. As I said earlier,
world building.
World building. I say it weirdly.
Why would you weld a
Why
building?
would you mock me for how I speak?
It's what a Glockter was.
It's a bit harsh, isn't it?
Not-
He's set in his head. I'd rather do that. Mock me in your
Fair
head.
enough. So world building.
World
World
building.
building.
In the blade itself, as I said, that we are centered in Adua. We learn a lot about the historical events and about a lot of the lore, but in Before They're Hanged, the characters are thrust outside of their comfort zones, usually to places they've never been before to actually explore this world. We have West going up north, the Dogman already there, but he's coming down through Angland. We have the trio of perspectives along with the rest of Pharaoh, Logan and Jezzel going off west, and then we have Glockter sent by Archlector Salt down to Dagoska, which brings back some bad memories of being captured by the Gurkish, but memories that he's never forgotten.
Memories never fade.
Never. And
especially when it involves putting your teeth out. So,
and I think that Joe Abercrombie very cleverly drips the lore through this. He has Bayaz tries to become a bit of a mentor, and that's a very clever way to, in a sense of exposition, but in a very engaging way, teach the others about the law of the world, but in a way where you see he's reluctant to give up some details, and there's a greater depth than just saying, okay, this is what happened and this will be relevant later. There's a lot of details that are relevant to how they impact the characters rather than the story. And that's another thing that I think with the world building, it really helps it evolve and really just take shape. Are you going to add anything about the world?
No, that's why you said it all, Will. Excellent.
Wow.
I'm just nodding along.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think the world, I was really looking forward to exploring more of this after I finished the Blade itself, and I was not disappointed at all.
I see a lot of people saying they're not really too keen on Joe's world building because there's not much there, but I do disagree. I think each culture feels different, and the way the characters are represented, the way they speak, and the way people act. There's a bit of everything in there, you know, and you find that through Joe's books that, you know, you might have a Northman who's, you know, maybe not as keen on fighting, and they're, you know, a bit more philosophical, but, you know, and you have people who are the Gurkish as well, who, you know, speak differently, act differently. I think, you know, the world building is done well, and it's done through the characters. You're experiencing things through the characters' eyes. Like when Glocta's in Dagoska, you're seeing all of that culture surrounding him.
Exactly,
it might not come in the forefront where it's you know, it's essential to the plot, but it does feel like a fully formed world is living and breathing, and the characters are just trying to survive within it.
And often they don't care about where they are, they just want to survive. And they are often doing the bidding of their masters to survive again.
Yeah, exactly. No one here is their own master, is it?
No, they aren't. They're all fettered by things of their past or current people who hold sway over them. So I think that again brings the world to life. But again, it's up to personal preference, isn't it? It's something that I think you don't read Abercrombie for the world, even though it's a great aspect. But with some people it clicks, some people it doesn't. But with us, it clicked.
And some people might read him for the action, which is what we'll talk about next.
Nice segue into the next part.
Thank you very much. I've been doing this for a very long time.
The last segment of this review, before we go into our overall thoughts, is about the action. In the Blade itself, we get our fair share of action, but it's small scale, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's brutal, intimate, and bloody, but it's only a few interactors, isn't it?
Yeah.
But in Before They're Hanged, we have that.
Joe's like, I'm going to just crank this up to 6.5 out of 10, because the last Argument of Kings,
you know what a 10
is even bigger. Yeah, exactly.
But you have your large scale battles. You have ones where you're losing, winning, people you love are dying. He's brutal.
The combat is brilliant.
So immersive.
I love the combat because, as you say, Will, it's immersive. It feels like when you're watching The Revenant, how that first fight, when it goes from one character to another, and then Joe actually does do a fight like that in The Heroes, but we'll talk about that another time. But the way the camera is so close, you know, you imagine Leonardo DiCaprio, he shoots someone out of a tree, doesn't he? And it's right next to him, and you see every speck of dirt, you see every tooth flying, you see every drop of blood, and you feel their heartbeats are pounding within their
it's the
chests.
synesthesia where you know what's going on within all the senses, don't you? That you see what they're seeing, you hear what they're hearing, and often it's not what you expect. Joe's really thought about what is going on. Okay, he feels his heartbeat. Oh, okay, he's hurt his toe, but there's adrenaline, so he's going to realise that after.
Yeah. And each set piece, each piece of action gives something else to the character, whether it's, you know, Jezzel trying to find who he actually is, whether he's a warrior or not, whether, you know, it's Logan being a bit of leadership or a father figure, that kind of thing. So yeah, everything, you know, plays a point. Everything's a factor, isn't it? And everything makes the character development all that sweeter.
Kind of said a bit of myself. So now that's the action. Now we'll go into our overall thoughts. As I said earlier, and as you may be able to tell, this is my favourite book of the year so far. I think that it's better than The Blade itself because of that dynamic between Pharaoh, Logan and Jezzel, which is the best dynamic of a group of characters.
From an A to an A
star.
A star, yeah.
And that dynamic is the best that I've read in any single book ever, because it's got everything. It's got the humour, it's got the serious undertones, it's got the overall arching plot line, as well as their smaller roles to play within that, and the realism as well, and the psychological development that Joe's put into these characters. It's really amazing, and he's obviously put a lot of care into them. Well, care in one way, care as in I will make them real, not care as in I will look after them, because he puts them through terrible things.
He's a really bad dad, you know.
The Bloody Nine makes a few appearances, and we know that's not a good thing. And
no one fights the Bloody Nine.
No one fights the Bloody Nine.
I would love to see what Sarah Reed thinks of, you know, characters like Logan and Glocta. I think Sarah's actually planning on doing some videos on the psychology behind the characters, and you know that's her job, isn't it?
Yeah,
Sarah's a
she's a
great
psychologist.
booktuber. Definitely go check out her channel for some amazing thoughts.
We'll put a link to her channel below.
We really will. We'll love to chat to her sometime, maybe about the First Law as well, because I'm sure she's got some amazing thoughts about the characters in the First Law and, you know, what drives them and that kind of stuff. When we spoke about Shadow of the Gods, she said some really interesting things about Varg, so that was
Exactly.
That's
That's really
interesting, wasn't it?
Obviously, what things that jump out to you often are attached to what you do yourself and what you're interested in. And she's a psychologist, so she obviously really sees things that me and you would miss out on.
Yeah, and she
Sadly,
knows that I love cheese.
Svik. Anyway, that may be quite random, but Svik is a character in The Shadow of the Gods by Papa Gwynne, and he's partly inspired by Ed, and he's got an obsession with cheese.
Well, who doesn't?
But again,
people who are lactose intolerant probably don't, but they might do. But they can't have it. It's forbidden fruit. Fermented.
We've digressed again. But there we go. There's a summary of Before They're Hanged, our thoughts. Hopefully this is something that would appeal to you.
Yeah, it's wicked. Go read it.
Just do it. We could have just had this as a 10-second video.
Yeah, you should read this because wicked. See you later.
Great characters. Bye. But anyway, there we go. I hope you enjoyed this video, this review, and we hope that you look forward to future ones that we do for the First Law and everything else that we have on the channel.
If you enjoyed this review, we do have a Patreon now, so go check it out if you feel inclined. That's absolutely fine. We'd love that. But you know, let us know in the comments below, guys, if you have enjoyed the First Law. What do you think of Before They're Hanged, and what do you think of The Last Argument of Kings? Does it stick the landing for you? What do you think? We will be reviewing The Last Argument of Kings very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for the channel. We'll have lots more videos coming out very soon.
And are you looking forward to the last Age of Madness book coming out? So on that note, truth and courage, the Brothers Gwynne.
Truth and courage, you can never have too many knives.